Hello, I'm here with Jason Cargill, Flir's technical sales specialist, and he's going to be walking and talking us through Flir's Thermal Studio Pro software. Welcome, Jason.
Thank you.
Shortly, you're going to be showing us how to use Flir's Thermal Studio Pro software.
I am.
However, before that, I just want to ask a few quick questions about it.
Okay.
So if you're here for the walkthrough, just skip to the time code on screen now. Please, could you tell us what Flir's Thermal Studio Pro software is?
Okay, so Thermal Studio and Thermal Studio Pro, which I'm going to show today, it's a software suite, which was the follow-on from the very successful Flir Tools. Flir Tools is now obsolete. It's no longer supported by Flir, and Thermal Studio has taken over. And Thermal Studio has been around for a few years now, but we still have a lot of users of Flir Tools. And there's definitely a lot of benefits really in regards to moving on to the new platform. And hopefully today, the idea is to show some of those benefits and show what the users could get from the new software.
So this is a desktop-based software? It's not.
Yes.
It's not an app for your phone or anything?
It's not an app for your phone. It's desktop only. It's not cloud service. You don't connect to the internet to use it. It's installed onto your particular machine. Mm-hmm. One license will give you 2 installations. So, for example, you could have a desktop and a laptop. Uh-huh. They are separate accounts. They're not connected in any way. Yeah. So they would be individual. So if one saved certain files on one and one saved certain files on the other, they wouldn't talk to one another. Okay. That's a different system we have in regards to collaboration. But it's a desktop-based system. It's also worth making a note of the fact that this is a Windows program. It's not a Mac-based system. So
who would benefit from using this software?
Ultimately, this is classed as analysis and reporting software. Mm-hmm. So it will allow users to analyze thermograms, which is the correct name for the thermal image. Mm-hmm. So when you capture a thermogram on the camera, you can then study the thermogram on the screen. Yeah. And you can add some marker tools and basically elicit as much information as you can from the image, which you can then put into a report, and then that report can be put into a PDF, for example, or it could actually, you could export the Excel version of the data. So you've got multiple options within the software to capture the information that you're looking for when you're using the software.
Okay. And so which thermal tools is it compatible with?
Ultimately, the software is compatible with all Flir cameras. Okay. And certainly from our portable range, there's other softwares available as you move through different divisions within Flir. Yeah. But for the portable cameras that we use, Thermal Studio is the main desktop solution that we have.
So would that be the E series? The T series?
This could be the CX, it could be the EX, it could be EXX, it could be T series. Yeah. Ultimately, these cameras produce a radiometric JPEG image. Mm-hmm. So radiometric means that there's temperature data, thermal data included in the image. Yeah. And then you need the software to be able to analyze the image. Otherwise, you would be able to open the image up just with a normal Windows tool, mm-hmm. but it will only be an image to look at. You won't be able to actually do any analysis. So you do need the software for that.
So there are different software packages available, aren't there? There's sort of like the basic, then there's another one and another one. I can't remember the names of them. Could you talk us through what they are and what the differences between them are?
Yeah, so we have within the Thermal Studio software suite, we have 3 options. So we have the starter option, we have the standard version, and then we have the pro version. Yeah. And it's the pro version today which we're going to be talking about the most. But the interesting thing with the starter version is it's free to download. Mm-hmm. And what it allows, so for example, if there are users out there of Flir Tools who are reticent to change because they're happy with what they have or it does what they need it to do, it will give them an option to try Thermal Studio to really see what the differences are. Because one of the key things with Flir Tools was it used to work with Microsoft Word. Okay. And so when there were changes on Microsoft Word, there was always a lag between the Flir software being updated. Yeah. So there was sometimes it could be an issue for users, whereas now Thermal Studio is a standalone package. It doesn't use Microsoft at all. So it will allow customers to download Flir Thermal Studio starter version, which gives you access to a lot of the tools. It does have its limitations, but that's to be expected. They can try it out, and then they can either decide whether, this is going to be beneficial, so we can either invest in the standard version or the pro version, which are available in both perpetual license form, so one payment up front, or they are on a subscription basis. And all the details can be found on the website.
So we're about to talk about the Pro version, but could you maybe highlight some of the differences between the standard and the Pro?
Yeah, some of the main differences is the Pro version has batch processing, for example.
Yeah.
So batch processing is a feature that wasn't available on Flir tools. So batch processing allows users to, if they have 100 images that they've captured, for example, and they want to add other marker tools or other information onto those images, or they want to change the color of the palette, which is the color scheme, they can actually set up a batch processing toolbox on the software to then make those changes to all those images at the same time.
Yes, it saves time.
It saves a lot of time, but also it doesn't change the original images.
Okay.
So it doesn't replace the originals. They will still be there, but you'll be able to use batch processing to create maybe, again, a different color scheme or using a different color palette for a particular customer or for a particular application. But also it could be additional markers that maybe you didn't have on at the time when you captured the images. So it's a really, really useful tool. So that's one feature. There's also the panorama feature, which allows you to basically stitch images together.
Okay.
So, for example, if you're looking at the fascia of a building, from the ground level, it may be quite wide and high. You can't capture all of it into one thermal image or one thermogram. So then you can stitch 2-3 images together, and then they will basically, the pixels will align with the image. So the images need to be taken on basically the same kind of level.
Yeah.
But this can be done with a portable camera. It doesn't have to be tripod mounted. And then you will be able to get a vista or a fascia of a building, which could be benefit from that. So but people are using thermal imaging for building applications and building surveys. They could benefit from the likes of the panorama feature. So there's another reason that Thermal Studio Pro is a good option is because it is also compatible with our acoustic cameras.
Okay, yeah.
So acoustic imaging has been a relatively recent addition to the Flir portfolio.
Yeah.
We've introduced new models very, very recently as well, a new model, the SI1. But ultimately, it allows users to even combine reporting. So if you use Flir thermal imaging cameras already, and you are looking at Flir acoustic imaging cameras, you could use the same piece of software with the benefit of a plugin, which is provided with the acoustic cameras. So it opens up the use of Thermal Studio for not just thermal imaging as well, but acoustic too.
I suppose that's good for maintenance teams because they only need one piece of software for multiple tools.
Yes.
Yeah. And if you do want to learn more about acoustic cameras, we've got a fair few videos on Flir's acoustic imaging cameras, so do check out our YouTube channel. For more information about the Thermal Studio Pro, please click the box above to download the spec sheet or head to our website. The link is in the description. But do come back because up next, Jason is going to be telling us how to use the Flir Thermal Studio Pro.
So what we'll do first is we'll open up the software. We now have the main desktop page open. Then the images will appear on this main screen here, on this main page. You do have the option to select the format in which they appear. So you can have medium icons and you can also have them in list view as well. The advantage of using the very large icons, it gives you a better look at the actual images themselves. So we can see here as well, in line with the folder system you have on your PC, we have a library option, which is where we access the images. We have a reporting tab. We have a routing tab.
Right.
Because this is another key feature about Thermal Studio is we have a routing function where you can use Thermal Studio to build a route for your camera.
Yeah.
You load that route into the camera and then the camera will guide the user as per the route that you've installed. We have batch edit, which is where the batch processing takes place. And we have a live stream where we can actually link a camera and shoot live through the camera so the camera screen appears on your laptop. So this is the kind of the main screen. If we just go to the top up here, you have your settings menu. We have a direct line to support at Flir.
Useful.
The user manual is in there as well. You can then have your licenses, for example. So if I just click on that now, it tells me that I have a Thermal Studio Pro perpetual license. There are some tutorials available as well.
Oh.
So some people are worried about learning something new.
Yeah.
When you click on this tutorials, it will give you access to resource videos for training purposes. So for example, now on the screen, we've got some training, free resources here. You've got webinars and articles, training in different sections. So there's some webinars which we've had produced, which are free to download as well.
Yeah.
So that is a really useful tool to use with Thermal Studio just by accessing it directly from the software. And then when we go to the About option down the bottom, just gives you some information if you ever need to give information about that particular part of the software. So what we do now is, for example, we've opened the library up and we have a number of images in the library. So we're interested in a particular image. So you click on the image to highlight it, and then you have the thermogram in the right-hand side column. You have the ability to switch between digital camera and infrared, because as the thermal image is captured, it captures a digital and a thermal image at the same time, and they can be combined in the software. We have some details about the actual file itself, and then we can actually option to click on the measurements as well that we've got in a really sort of a quick, short view. So what we can do then is go to Edit Image, and this then opens up the image onto the main page. So now we can see the image in more detail. We already have a marker on here, for example. Really easy to remove if you want to. You click on the marker, you hit delete on your keypad, and that removes the marker. So what we've got the ability now is to work on this particular image. So this is where the analysis part of the software comes into play. Yeah. So we have a large thermogram, and then we have information on this side relating to various aspects of the image. So for example, if I click on this icon here, it opens up what are classed as notes, and you're able to add notes to an image after it's been captured, or any notes which have been added on some of the cameras which have the keyboards, which appear on the screens. You can add that data, which will then be transferred into your image as well. Again, more information in regards to that tab. And then we do have GPS location available on some images as well. So if you're doing external thermography, for example, you might have a lot of targets which are very disparate in regards to their locations. You can actually have a GPS location tag as well. That can be turned on and off. It's not on every image if you don't want to. So what we can do now is then go to this part of the page, which is the toolbar. So this is the analysis toolbar. So we look at this particular tool, for example, which is classed as the add measurement tool. We open up that and it gives us a number of different options now for doing some analysis of this particular thermogram. So easy enough to add a spot temperature. So in that particular spot, temperature there now appears on this side of the screen and gives us the information regarding the temperature at that spot. If we wanted to add another spot, we can just right click on this one, create a duplicate, and then we can move that to another location. So we have two different options now in regards to this particular area of the temperatures, spot 1, and we have spot 2 as well. There are other tools available. So for example, we can look at a line profile. So we can draw a line through a particular target. And what we can then do is if we access this icon here, we can open up the temperature profile line that we've just drawn.
Okay. And see where it...
Yeah, so everywhere we drag this particular dotted line, it will give us the temperature at the bottom next to the green marker. Now what we can do is we can look at the settings on these particular tools as well. So at the moment we have a green profile line that can be changed in here just by accessing different colors. So if you have a number of different lines, you'll have a number of different colors for denomination purposes as well.
So is that for seeing how the temperature changes across an area? Yeah,
so for example, if we open this up, this temperature line here is shown in this profile. So if you wanted to pick certain points along this particular temperature profile line, you can make a note of those as you go along.
Yeah.
We then have a rectangle tool, which is quite common, and historically has been very common in regards to a particular analysis tool. Allows you to draw a particular size box, and then within that box it will give you multiple information. So we go back to the data here. We have the spot temperature that we put in the first time and the second time. We have the profile line is in there now as well with minimum, maximum, average temperature. And then we have the actual box, which we've just added, which gives us a minimum, maximum temperature within a box.
So that's doing the minimum, maximum, and average across the area, and the line is just across where the line.
Just the line, yes.
Yeah.
Now, again, easy to remove by pressing delete, so we can just remove some of this for these purposes to show. We have another tool on here which is classed as an ellipse. So this allows you to drag a particular shape.
For where a rectangle maybe wouldn't work, is that?
Yeah, it could be something that if you need information more within a particular area, that's another way to do it.
Yeah.
But what we also have is we have some other tools called polygon. So you can be even more specific now in regards to drawing around a particular area. So that's a polygon tool. And again, the information will appear on this side. So within that shape that I've just created, you can also, after you've selected it, you can also move as well to go around a particular area with all the information included there. So that's the ellipse, that's the polygon tool. But even more interestingly as well, now we have a magic wand tool. So that terminology might be familiar to people who use photography software. But what we do now is if we just drag this over a particular area, it will now highlight an area within a particular band of temperature. So we have a tolerance setting over here. So if I change the tolerance, you can see the size of this is changing now.
Okay, yeah.
So if I only want to pick up areas of roughly about 1 degree, the same temperature, it's now highlighted over that particular zone.
So it's it's temperatures within 1 degree of each other.
Yeah, so basically what I've done now is we've now drawn, using the magic wand tool, over this particular area. And it's the area which is between, as a tolerance of 10.5 degrees around the temperatures here. So all it means is you can be very specific with the tool to really home in on the hottest point. So the most thermal energy which is being emitting within that tolerance is in this particular zone here.
Okay.
So it allows you to really, it's a quicker way to look at a particular area of excessive thermal energy.
Yeah.
You then have the ability to look at a delta as well. So when you hear the terminology delta T, it's a temperature differential between 2 points or 2 areas.
Okay.
And for thermography, which is being used for maintenance purposes, users are very interested in the difference between what they expect the temperature to be or the ambient temperature and what maybe the issue is with the component. So delta T is really important. So what it allows you to do with this particular tool is if we add a couple of spot markers in on here, and again, you can either duplicate or you can just add. If I just remove that tool, so now we've got 2 spot markers now. So if I go to the delta tool, so we have a delta here, so it's classed as DX1. So what we can do is we go to settings and we choose the sources for the 2 different markers. So we have spot 1 and I want to select spot 2 in this case. And we say done. So the delta now between spot 1 and spot 2 on this image is 38.1 degrees. So that's a very simple way of looking between 2 different areas. You could even do that with the rectangle tool, for example. So we could have a box here, like that. Create a duplicate, maybe put them on over here, like that. And then we could look at the delta within the box as well. So from a delta perspective, we go to settings again, and we can go to box 1, max to box 1, and box 2, and we go to maximum. And then that gives the information then relating to the 2 boxes that we've selected. So you've got multiple options with this kind of delta tool. So when we open up the next option on the toolbar, you have the option to add arrows. So for example, we have an arrow here. So if you wanted to point at a particular component, you can do that quite simply using one of these tools here.
So is this more for creating images that will go into reports eventually?
Yes. So if you want to draw attention to something of interest,
yeah.
So anomalies are what they're generally known as. you can make it really clear on the image with the addition of something on one of these tools. And there's quite a number of tools available in there as well. We then go across to your selection of your palette. So your palette is the color scheme that you use on your thermal camera. If I just close this profile down to make the screen larger. So what we can do is we can choose the palette to be changed after it's been captured.
Okay.
So for example, if you're looking at targets of very low thermal contrast, it's beneficial sometimes to use kind of a rainbow high contrast palette.
Okay.
So this isn't really a low contrast image, but I'll show you the difference in the way that they look. So this is classed as iron, which is probably the most common palette which is used throughout maintenance operations.
Why is that?
It's deemed to be the best option when you're looking at high contrast targets.
Okay.
And it's pretty much just the most common, which people actually use. But if we go to something like a rainbow high contrast, we can see that looks very, very different.
Yes.
Because what we've done now is we've added a lot more colours into the temperature range. So there are more colour denominations of different amounts of thermal energy which is being produced.
Yeah.
And then when we go back to the iron, we can see there's less colours in here now.
Yeah.
But it's still a nice clear image, and that allows us to really analyse what the changes might be or the trending which is going on within that particular image at the time. So these are the options to change your colour palette. The interesting one is when you go to something like grayscale. So grayscale, it doesn't look as visually stunning.
Yes.
You've lost all colours, but the interesting thing, the human eye can detect more in shades of grey than it can in colour.
Really?
So kind of the black and white kind of thing, if you're trying to find you're trying to get a good image of maybe a really difficult target, sometimes the grayscale palette can be a better option for the human eye. And we do have two options here. We have what we call black, hot and grey. So the black relates to the hot area. Now you can see now, although it's not what we would correlate with something being hot, it does actually stand out really well on the image. So there's different options in there as well. But we'll go back to the usually used iron for this demonstration. So very easy to change your palette. You then move to the next, which is fusion mode. Okay. So these are modes which are available when I talked previously about when you capture an image or you capture a thermogram, it's capturing two images at the same time. One through the digital lens, so the visual image, and one through the thermal lens, which is the infrared image, the thermogram. And then what you can do, you can manipulate those images using the software to maybe highlight areas using both images. So for example, here at the moment is we have a feature on some cameras called MSX. To be fair, it's available on almost all the range. And MSX stands for multispectral dynamic imaging. So what that does, it allows you to essentially emboss the visual detail onto a thermal image. So in this case, we have quite a nice clear thermal image.
Yeah.
If I go to the MSX tab, we've now brought out some of the visual detail. And what that means is, one of the big things is you can read through the thermal image. So if you have cable identification or you have identification of a switchboard or components within a switchboard, you can actually read the details through a thermal image now. Normally that wouldn't be possible.
No.
You wouldn't be able to see that detail. So that's one of the benefits of it, but also it also highlights the edges of. So for example, if you look at an area where you've got a number of different connections or cables, MSX becomes a really useful tool, but it doesn't have to be on all the time. It can be turned on and off. So we go back to thermal only, for example. But what we can also do then, because we've got the two images, we can use thermal fusion. So thermal fusion allows us to use both images on the same image, but highlighting particular areas within the frame that we have. So for example, on here is, when we click on the thermal fusion options, we can either look at an interval band of temperature, so between two temperatures, or we can look at below a temperature or above a temperature. So for example, if we're only interested in areas above a certain temperature, we can then use the slider up here to dictate what temperature that will be. So if we're only interested in anything being revealed over that particular temperature there, that's all that will be shown. Okay. And what we can also do is, if we just go on to that, we can see here, there's a slight misalignment with this.
Yeah.
Because essentially what happens when you're taking a image or capturing an image from two different points, which essentially even though they're very close together on the camera, they are two different points of view.
Yeah.
So it's a bit like if you hold your finger up in front of your face and you keep both eyes open, and then you close one eye and then you close the other eye, your finger appears to move.
Yes.
Your finger doesn't move, but you have two different points of view. It's called parallax error. So what can happen sometimes with when you combine an image, you can have parallax error. So what you can do is you just use this simple tool here, which then allows you to just realign really simply. And then you just save that. And that just gives you that little tweak where you're aligning correctly over the different components. So again, very easy to choose a different temperature.
So why are some areas appearing black?
Yeah, that is if you then go too low. You move away from what the data is in the visual image. So this is generally used just to highlight an area of a particular temperature which is of interest. And again, it could be an interval temperature, which is then between two temperatures.
Yes.
So we can see here, we're going between 35 degrees and say 64 degrees, and it's only highlighting as a thermal image, a thermogram. So that's the kind of what we use for the thermal fusion. Again, what we can do is we can just go back to full thermal to get rid of that additional information. We then have this color distribution tool, which allows you to choose, for example, if we look at the actual left-hand side of the page here when I change. So we're currently on signal linear. So what this is a very linear increase across the color spectrum within this palette. Whereas when we go to the histogram equalization, we lose the thermal data on the side, but it also changes the image very, very slightly because we're using those pixels in a different way.
Okay.
So histogram equalization is really, histogram equalization is a good function to use on high contrast targets.
Okay.
Generally, I leave mine just on signal linear when I'm using my particular software, but you do have other options in there as well. And you can see there's very slight changes as we move through those options. I like signal linear because it has the temperature band on the side.
Yeah.
So it's going into a bit more detail when it comes.
What's it doing with the histogram?
It's basically it's changing the way that the color palette and the colors are assigned to the thermal energy which is being emitted.
Okay.
So it can make, in certain scenarios, and really this can only be judged at the time when you've already captured the image. So you will capture your image, you'll look on the screen and maybe try different equalization tools or distribution. Or then you can try different distribution tools just to see if it enhances your image at all.
Okay.
But again, there's not a massive difference in regards to the contrast of the target on here. So I'd stick with signal linear on my particular application. Okay, so we then move to the next function which we have, which is called the isotherm control. So an isotherm is an area of the same temperature, and it's denoted by a color that you select. So whereas with Fusion, we were using the thermogram and the visual image, with this, we're actually going to use a color to highlight an area on an image. So we'll go for an area above a certain temperature. This then opens up the option down here. So we're going to change the color on this. Let's change something a bit brighter, like this blue. And then what we can do then is we just want to show an area which is above a certain temperature. So let's say 35 degrees. Okay, we want to tie that down even further. So let's say 45 degrees.
Okay.
So you can see now anything which is in this color is above this particular temperature. Now we have different options here. We can do an interval. So if we want to pick up between, let's say, 35 degrees Celsius and let's say 40 degrees Celsius. This is going to pick up this particular area here.
All that appears in yellow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then that's what you'll use to just highlight a particular zone that you're interested in.
Yeah.
And again, the colours can be changed after the fact as well.
Oh.
So we can see.
Looks better.
Yeah. So different colours can have different effects depending on the type of palette that you have.
Yeah.
So that's the use of the isotherm tool. There are other options in here as well. They can be used in buildings, for example, with, humidity and dew point.
Okay.
So, for example, if you have a building where there's any kind of moisture involved, for example, on a wall,
yeah,
as moisture evaporates, it cools down. So it allows you to see those kind of changes, for example, in a building, using some of the isotherm tools as well that we have. So we go to the crop tool. So we want to look at a particular image. We can just click on this. We can move it around if we want to. We can then highlight the area that we're interested in. And then we click the box, and that will highlight the particular zone. And then we can just reset the image. You can rotate the image. So sometimes if you're looking at something in a particular profile where you need to turn the camera 90 degrees, for example, to get more in, height or width, you can then use this as a rotation tool just to simply rotate the image to a more particular area that you want to look at yourself. So that's pretty much a run through of kind of the main sort of analysis tools. So if I just go back to this particular area here, let's add a spot meter. We'll duplicate that, add another spot meter down here. And then we'll add let's put a delta in there as well, between those two markers. So there's the delta. Choose our two markers, spot 1 and spot 2. And we've done that as a calculation. So another quick tool that we got access to enhance an image quickly is down the bottom here, we have this toolbar. So as I move this along now, you can see that it changes the look of the image quite quickly. So what we can do is we can look at homing in on a particular area just by using this slider tool, which is really easy to use.
And why is it going white? Is that because it's
going out? It's become saturated, so it's out of the capability of the temperature range that we have. So it doesn't assign a color. It just goes. It's whited out essentially.
Is that the same for when it goes black as well?
Yeah. The both ends of the scale. So basically, if we look here on this temperature scale, down here we're going into the black color, and then we go through a variety of blues, purples, pinks, reds, oranges, yellows, and then we're up to white. So if it gets over that temperature at the top, so 63 or under the 40, then it will just saturate out. So that's a really useful little tool just for highlighting parts of an image as well. So we've made some changes. So what we need to do is make sure we need to save them.
Yes.
So we click up here to save. So we've now saved that particular image with those two markers on. We can then exit this and go back to your main page again. So this is the image that we've just captured. Now you have other options on here as well. So there are different images which you can then select. So if you wanted to choose another image, you can either double click or go to the edit function. So this is just another thermal image where, you've got the same facility to do the same thing. So this has already got a rectangle tool on. So we can just highlight over that particular box here. There's our box settings. We can show what we want to actually pick up within. So we've got a hotspot enabled within the marker there, which is this red marker, which is saying 35 degrees is the hotspot. So sometimes being able to look at something in a large area and just home in on the hottest point, and once you see that that's okay, you can just move on to the next one. So it's a very quick analysis tool more than anything. Obviously, there's other parameters to consider. It isn't just a case of pointing and shooting, but generally users of our cameras have taken part in some of our training as well with the Infrared Training Centre. So, we make another save on here, and then we exit. So we've finished doing the analysis that we want now. So what we want to do now is we want to put these into a report. So we select the report tab, and then Thermal Studio comes with a lot of preset templates. But those templates mightn't suit a customer. They may decide they want to create their own, which they can. Another easy way to do it will be to edit an existing template. We'll show how to do that on another video because it's a bit more involved, but creating a template is something you can do. Import your own logo, have your own layout, the data that you want to capture from the camera. So you've got the flexibility to do that. So for example, in this case, we'll just do we choose a basic thermal imaging template. We then go up here to new report using template as opposed to new blank report. We want to use a template. So we're going to click on that now, which is highlighted that. It's then brought us to the template page now. These are the images that we've had in our library. So, for example, that's one of the images which we put a marker on. And then you can select the particular images that you wish, or you can select them all. But what you do then is you pull them into this particular column.
Yeah.
And what it'll then do, it'll populate as per the template into the report.
That's easy.
It's really easy to do. I mean, what users of Flir tools will find is it's faster than Flir tools was in creating reports.
Yeah.
So what we're going to do now is we're going to use a template. So Thermal Studio comes with some templates preloaded, which customers can use straight away. Alternatively, they can create their own template, or even better is to edit an existing template which is already provided.
Yeah.
I'll just basically show what you right click on a tab on the actual template that you're interested in. You go to edit, then that allows you then to edit your
template.
It then allows you to edit your template. But we'll exit from that. That'll be provided in another video.
Okay.
So what we do now is select a template. We go to new report using template. This then opens up the page where we're now then going to pull in the different images that we're interested in. So they can be done one at a time, or you can select multiple images at the same time. But ultimately, it's now populating the particular template that we've chosen. And as you can see, that was pretty quick. You've then got your thermogram with the rectangle we put on before.
Pulled in the digital image as well.
Digital images in there. It can be included or not. If that was a fusion image, that would be shown on the report as well. We have some data which is pulled in from the camera as well. We have the box marker with the maximum temperature included.
Yeah.
And that's just a really simple way of creating a report with Thermal Studio. Really simple, really easy. Then what we do up here is we then go to, for example, export to PDF.
Yep.
Select on that. You then choose your folder where it's going to save. And then that'll save the PDF that anyone can then read. You don't need the software to look at a PDF.
Yeah.
So it's processing now.
So that could be emailed out.
That could be emailed to you, colleagues, customer, and anything like that. I mean, there's a lot more editing functions available, but we don't have the time to really cover them all. But this is kind of the most basic parts of reporting, analysis, using the software in general. I'm going to go through some of the other functions that we mentioned at the start. Sort of the batch processing function, for example, just to show you about that. But again, that will be really for a different video because it's a bit more involved. And then there's your PDF report, which has been created. Very easy to send out. Let me go back to our Thermal Studio icon. You can also export images to other formats as well. So what you can do is you can export your thermal data into an Excel file. So a lot of people like to use that for analysis purposes as well.
Yeah.
So it's showing here there's a CSV file already saved. So what we'll then move on now, don't want to save those changes. So we then move across the toolbar. So we have the routing function. Now we'll do a separate video on routing because it's a much more in-depth subject. So essentially what it allows customers to do is to create a route on their desktop software, load that route into the camera then the user is guided around by the camera. So for example...
Like anybody could use it, couldn't they?
Yeah.
Get the right data.
And all we do is we're looking at adding particular, whether it's a new group. We can then add a new asset.
Yeah.
We can then add an inspection point. You can then duplicate that. So essentially what we do is we create a cascading report. And this would relate to, for example, switchboard room 1, switch panel A, and then it would be maybe contactors 1, 2, 3, for example. So it's a simple way to do it using the software, but you can also import an asset list using this function here. So for example, you might already have routes built into Excel format, for example. They can be imported into the software. So it's not just about creating from new. You can use existing routes as well.
I suppose that makes sure that you're getting consistent data each time.
Yes, and again, when we show on a future video, we have the facility to use what's called a reference image. So one of the most important things when you're capturing thermal images, thermograms, is you're trying to replicate the conditions if you can. So ideally, the same distance away, the same angle, the same point of view that you were looking at. I mean, ideally, same situation when it comes to load conditions, but that's not always possible.
Yeah.
So you replicate what you can. And with the routing software that we have, it allows you to use essentially like a ghost image.
Yes.
So you can align over the same component, but using the previous image.
Yeah.
So that then allows you to capture some good data. So we then just exit this. This is your batch editing tool. So for example, Panorama's in here as well. But a new batch job. Yeah, so batch processing, batch editing, whichever you want to call it, means you can do multiple images at the same time. So if we just go into open this tool up now, this is your toolbox on the left-hand side. So essentially all the tools in this toolbox can be added to any images, any number of images at the same time.
Yeah.
So for example, if we wanted to add a maximum spot meter, it then appears into the job side of the column. If we wanted to add a rectangle, which show in particular, so for in here we can have marker settings, which we can open up. And then we go to run batch job. And again, this is just showing it quickly.
Yeah.
We then pull the images in that we want to include. And then we go to, you can change the output folder to one that's specific to you, or it will just automatically select one. And then you go to run batch job. And then we will see the images that now appear on the left-hand side once they're being processed.
I mean, this is easy for 3 images, but I suppose it'd be really useful if you had like 300 images.
Well, to be fair, I did a demonstration with 500 images, and that was pretty quick.
Oh yeah, I mean, but it would be really, it's a helpful feature to have when you have so much data to go through.
If you capture a lot of images as part of your process, batch editing, I'd say, is an invaluable tool to have access to, because it does allow you to make those changes, even something as comprehensive as all the color palettes changing, for example. So it's created those new folders with those changes that we've made in that particular area. So let's say, for example, we want to change all the palettes. This is just the quickest way to show.
Yeah.
So we can drop the palette menu down here. So we're currently in iron. So we'll go to rainbow eye contrast. And then we'll run a batch job. And we'll pull these images, pull them into there, run the batch job. And then when you see them pop up in the new folder, you'll see they'll be up the new color scheme.
Yeah.
So we can see on the left-hand side now, we applied rainbow eye contrast. They've been saved into a different folder now.
So it doesn't overwrite the original?
No, the originals will still be in the original folder that you captured. And then it makes those changes. So it's a really easy way to make changes using batch processing.
You've given us a little taster of how you can organize.
It's a lot. It's a lot to cram into quite a short time. There's a lot more to it.
It's quite a comprehensive software.
It's comprehensive, but it is easy to use. And ultimately, it's a bit like using photography software. You don't need every function on your photography software. No. So users will find what works for them. And then maybe something like batch processing is going to be the biggest advantage.
Yes.
You know, for example, you can, on certain models of cameras, you can create a table which you can populate on the camera while you capture the image, or just after you've captured the image. That data can then be imported into your report. So therefore, it's cutting down the time that you spend at the desktop. Because years and years ago, it would be 2 hours for every 1 hour that you were actually capturing images. We've now really brought that down to a much more comparable time.
It's much more efficient with the Flir Studio Pro. Oh, thank you. I hope you found that helpful. And remember, further information about Flir's Thermal Studio Pro software can be accessed via the link in the box above or the link in the description. And do remember to subscribe, because then future videos that are just as helpful as this one will come straight to you. Okay, thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.